Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Premier Injuries Daily Roundup. Now, unfortunately, a little bit late, my fault, or should I say it's the kids' fault, so I'm going to blame them this time. So by the time you're watching this, we may have already had team news through from Manchester United and Palace, and also Leeds, who are in FA Cup third-round replay duty on Wednesday night. However, the news still stands ahead of the weekend, so a few key updates from the pre-match press conferences. First of all, we heard from Erik ten Hag. He was talking about why Luke Shaw started at centre-back at the weekend. He spoke about his player profile and how his strengths and attributes matched those of Erling Haaland, particularly in those combinations with Kevin De Bruyne. However, what he did say, performances and positions will be judged on a game-by-game basis, and he still feels that Luke Shaw has a lot to offer at left-back, even more so in those wider positions. So it's not something that he's going to be looking to do on a permanent basis. Of course, you have Lisandro Martinez waiting in the wings post-World Cup, also Harry Maguire and Victor Lindelof alongside Rafael Varane. So he is well-stocked in that department. But positive update there on Luke Shaw, and he could be flip-flopping between those two positions as the season goes on, depending on the opponents. Elsewhere within that Manchester United squad, Anthony Martial has failed to train since the derby. Erik ten Hag insisted that the player was adamant he wanted to start against Manchester City. He got that start, but unfortunately, clearly he wasn't 100% fit and he was pulled off at the break. Now, like I say, we do have Wout Weghorst signed now, so he is eligible to play and he could come in and make his debut. Like I say, team news may have already been confirmed with regards to that. If Anthony Martial isn't involved, then he's a strong possibility for this weekend, but we'll wait and see how that one pans out. Elsewhere, Leeds United, Jess Moore spoke about a strange injury to Liam Cooper. Strange in the fact that it was a non-contact injury, and it also happened or occurred while the players were warming up on Monday. So that's a little bit of a worry. Don't expect him to make that third round replay against Cardiff this evening. That was a possibility that we could see Diego Llorente, who's been out in the cold in recent times, return to that match day squad. Maybe that starting 11. He certainly is an option under serious consideration. Elsewhere, we have a Premier League matchup on Thursday evening. That's between Manchester City and Tottenham. First of all, the City news from Pep. Kevin De Bruyne was absent from training on Tuesday, sparking rumours that he had maybe picked up an injury. Fortunately, his absence from training was for personal reasons. He was granted permission to stay away from the training ground. He's absolutely fine, trained with the group on Wednesday. We also see John Stones and Ruben Diaz back training normally. John Stones should be fine. He's only missed the last two. No drop off there in terms of real fitness and sharpness. However, Ruben Diaz, he hasn't played since his involvement with Portugal in Qatar. I think he's got a little bit more to do, particularly with Pep having been quite well stocked in that central defensive area. For the opponents, Tottenham, Antonio Conte more or less confirmed that Rodrigo Bentancur will return to the matchday squad. Whether he starts or not remains to be seen. Probably suggests that he may be a little bit short, potentially minutes from the bench, and that would tee you up nicely for Monday's game against Fulham. East Basuma wasn't quite 100% for the North London derby. He's been carrying an ankle problem that pulled him out of the game against Portsmouth, but he's now clear with that, so he could come in. Of course, Pape Sarr was the player who got the nod alongside Højbjerg. It also remains to be seen whether Richarlison is in from the start of the week. And of course, he made the bench. Dejan Kuvaletsky, he was the one that started. Again, only had 2 or 3 sessions in his legs, so it was a little bit of a risk, but Antonio Conte decided to roll the dice. Unfortunately, it didn't quite pay off. Breaking news from Crystal Palace, we've seen Joachim Andersen limp off at the weekend against Chelsea. That was a calf-related problem. The expectation is it's going to rule him out for the remainder of the month, around about 3 weeks, so hopefully early February. With regards to potential players as a replacement, James Tompkins is an option for Patrick Vieira because he was sent off recently for 2 bookable offences. Also, we have Chris Richards who could come into that side, but his season has been hampered severely by a hamstring problem, so he's getting back up to speed. On Tuesday night, we seen Liverpool go to Molineux. They progressed with a 1-0 win. Great goal there from Harvey Elliott. Jurgen Klopp made 8 changes for the game. Darwin Núñez wasn't one of those. He was very close, just missed out. That's a hamstring problem, so we do expect him to return in the early kickoff against Chelsea on Saturday. Whether he's fit enough to start remains to be seen. We know hamstring injuries, they're the injuries with the biggest re-injury or recurrence rate, so you've got to treat those ones very, very carefully. Elsewhere within that Liverpool squad, Jurgen Klopp over the moon with that win and the performance. We've seen Joe Gomez paired alongside Ibrahima Konate. That's something that maybe they could stick with. Joel Matip hasn't been in great form for the Reds in recent times. For Wolves, Diego Costa returned to the bench, got minutes, but whether he's fit enough for a start this weekend remains to be seen. There was no Gonçalo Guedes for Wolves. He's missed the last 2. He has been heavily linked with a potential move away from Molineux, and that could be further enhanced following the arrival from PSG of Pablo Sarabia. He's going to be in direct competition with him with regards to a potential start. And a big update from Nottingham Forest. Bad news with regards to their goalkeeper, Dean Henderson. That looks to be a grade 2 thigh or quadriceps strain. Of course, that mechanism, he was clearing a ball on Saturday. So initial timeline suggests we're looking at a minimum of a month, so around about 4 to potentially up to 6 weeks for that. For this weekend, they're almost certain to lock in Wayne Hennessy, but the Athletic are reporting that they've got an eye on Keylor Neves from PSG as a possibility to come in on a short-term deal. That remains to be seen. And finally, we've seen Bruno Guimaraes limp off at the weekend against Fulham. That looked a nasty one. Thankfully, those MRI scans have come back fairly positive. We're talking about weeks as opposed to months. But unfortunately, we're not expecting him to return in January. So hopefully early part of February. And hopefully well ahead of that Carabao Cup final if we get there. In terms of how Eddie Howe might change things up, I would certainly expect maybe Joe Linton to drop a little bit deeper. He could come into that central midfield role. Now that opens up that left wing spot. Now, for me, there's 2 players really in contention with that. Neither is 100% fit. So like I say, it remains to be seen, and I'm waiting for maybe Friday's press conference to really sort of try and nail down who's going to be on that level. And that would be really, for me, 2 players, Alan Saint-Maxim and also Alexander Isak. I'm favouring Saint-Maxim at the moment because just in terms of that sharpness, he is better placed, but also Isak, he's been out such a long time. I think he has to be handled very, very carefully. But, his goal from the bench last weekend, the winner, is very encouraging. And I certainly see, more minutes and, him being gradually integrated into that first team. So that's your lengthy Premier Injuries Daily Roundup. Apologies for the delay. We have all of the press conferences ahead of Game Week 21 kicking off on Thursday. So keep your eyes and ears peeled as always at Premier Injuries, at Ben Dinnery, and www.premierinjuries.com for all the latest and breaking injury news. That's it for now.